Why are we insisting on the word happiness? Because we're thinking long-term here. We're thinking about a revolution in the way people think about the good life. A revolution in terms of the way people think and pursue life's ultimate currency. Happiness. Happiness studies as a field focuses on much more than positive psychology. In fact, it focuses on much more than psychology. It looks at what philosophers had to say about the good life, and it looks at theology and neuroscience and history and economics and film and literature. What we decided to do at the Happiness Studies Academy is salvage happiness. In other words, help people understand the true, the deep, the real meaning of a happy life. Precisely to talk about the fact that a happy life is about pleasure, and it's also about a sense of meaning and purpose in life. And it's about relationships and generosity and giving. And it's about intellectual well-being. It's about learning. And if we, through education, teach people that happiness is about pleasure, and happiness is about meaning, and it's about relationships, and it's about physical health, and it's about intellectual development. When people truly understand that all these elements make up the concept of happiness, then they will be more likely to pursue that, more likely to attain it, more likely to help others attain it, more likely to create a better world. Hello everyone and welcome. It's wonderful to see you here from Uruguay and Canada and the US, Massachusetts. Oh, and I see someone else here from Santo Domingo, which is where I am currently. And Dublin, Ireland, Mexico, Cleveland, Ohio, Israel, California. Wow. Great, Spain. Great to see you here. It's a little bit late, so we have a full agenda ahead of us. My name is Tal Ben-Shahar. I'm the co-founder of the Happiness Studies Academy. And I'm going to share with you today some ideas that we believe are important for happiness, for resilience. And I'm also going to share with you some information about the Happiness Studies Academy and about our flagship program, which is the Certificate in Happiness Studies. My colleagues and I co-founded the Happiness Studies Academy 7 years ago, and we have currently the Certificate in Happiness Studies. We offer a Master's in Happiness Studies as well as a PhD, also a Spire Yoga program and a Happier School program. So there's a lot. Today we'll focus on the certificate and we'll focus on you. Because after I present a little bit, let's say about 30 minutes, I'm going to introduce a video of my co-founder, Yuval Kutz, the president of the Happiness Studies Academy, who will talk about the certificate program. Then we will hear from Meg Nocero, who's one of our graduates and an author. And you'll get to learn a little bit about what she does. And then the floor is yours for your questions. And you can ask any questions about the topic that I'll discuss. You can ask questions of Meg about the program. You can ask me questions about the program or anything else that comes to mind. So before I start talking about resilience and meaning, which of course are important topics, certainly in today's world, a little bit about our methodology. All of our courses are 100% online. They focus on the field of happiness studies, which, as I mentioned in the video that you just watched, is different from the field of positive psychology in that it focuses on psychology, as well as philosophy, as well as neuroscience and art and economics. And it's an interdisciplinary approach to what we believe to be life's most important question. How can we help ourselves and others increase our levels of well-being? And when we talk about well-being, we're talking about happiness as we define it, and our definition of happiness includes the 5 elements of SPIRE: spiritual well-being, physical well-being, intellectual well-being, relational, and finally emotional well-being. SPIRE, SPIRE: spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional. Now, these elements contribute to a happy life and more. They also contribute to our being more resilient, better able to deal with hardships and challenges. So happiness is not just for those who feel good and want to feel better. Happiness is also for those who want to deal with hardships. It's not a panacea. It's not a substitute for clinical psychology, of course. However, it can provide us tools that can help us, or can help the therapist help the client, or the coach help the client, or the manager help the employees, or the parents help their children. Can help us become happier as well as better able to deal with challenges. So I want to turn my focus now to resilience. Over the past, well, throughout human history, really, but certainly over the past 6 years, resilience has become and is extremely important. COVID challenged civilization. There are wars today happening all over the world. There is political tension throughout our global village, economic uncertainty. And in order to better deal with these hardships, we need resilience. One of the, I guess, entertaining, but also very endearing questions that I'm often asked is usually by my younger students. So these would be, first year students in college, for instance, 18-year-olds. And, they take a course with me, and halfway through the course, or after a few weeks, they come to me and they would say something to the effect of, Professor, I'm really enjoying studying happiness or positive psychology, depends on the course I'm teaching. I'm really enjoying the topic. And in fact, I'm thinking of majoring in psychology and taking more courses in the field. But Professor, I'm a little bit concerned, they say. And again, I've heard this a number of times from the younger students. They say, I'm a little bit concerned. And I ask why. And they say, well, what if I get so good at positive psychology or at happiness studies, and I learned the tools and techniques that you're teaching and that the field offers us, and I know that they work and they help. What if I get so good at it that I will no longer experience hardships and difficulties and pain? And you talk about how important it is for growth to experience psychological struggles. What if I become so good at it, they say, that I won't experience those anymore? And my response is always the same. My response is, don't worry. Don't worry, life will take care of you. Life always takes care of us. So we really cannot run away from hardships and difficulties. They'll find us. It's life. However, while it's not under our control, it's not our choice whether or not we'll experience hardships. We will. What is under our control, what we do have a choice over, is how we respond to these hardships, to these challenges. Growing up, I would often hear from, the older members of our community, I would often hear the saying that things happen for the best. And I must say, even when I was a child, I never really connected to that statement. I mean, what do you mean things happen for the best? I mean, did COVID happen for the best? People died. Wars happen for the best? Really? So I don't agree with the fact that things happen for the best, but While things don't necessarily happen for the best, what I do know is that we can choose to make the best things that happen. Again, while things do not necessarily happen for the best, we can choose to make the best of things that happen. And one of the choices that we have is whether we cultivate in ourselves resilience, whether we cultivate inner strength so that we can better deal with hardships, challenges, and struggles when these arise. And they do. We all experience them. That's not the question. The question is, what do we do when we experience them? So, a few words about resilience. And I'm going to introduce you to a model which we teach as part of our certificate program. And it's an overarching model which can really help us think about many areas in our life, including resilience. So here goes the model. I learned about it first from a wonderful book I read back when I was a student. It was published in 1994 by two Stanford professors. The book is called Built to Last. And Built to Last, published in 1994, basically looked at the most successful visionary companies of their time. And again, this was pre Facebook and before, Apple became big and Microsoft was not that big then, but it looked at companies that were major companies at that time that had been around for a long time. So, for example, Hewlett Packard and Procter and Gamble, P&G, and Sony and Disney. And it looked at these companies and it asked why. Why have they been successful for so many years, outperforming the market by a margin of 15-1, uh, showing real success over time? What was unique about them? And what Collins and Porras, the two researchers from Stanford, identified were 12 key elements that distinguished these companies from others. For example, they were visionary. One one of those differentiating, distinguishing characteristics is what I want to focus on today. And that is as following. And I'm going to quote it and then explain it. These companies, rather than succumbing to the tyranny of the or, they embrace the genius of the and, A-N-D. Again, rather than succumbing to the tyranny of the or, they embrace the genius of the and. For example, there are some companies that say, look, we've got core values. We've had these core values for the past 100 years. We're going to be true to them in 100 years. They're not going to change. We adhere to them 100%. It's who we are. It's our identity. It's our DNA. We won't change. We don't change. On the other extreme, you have companies that say we constantly reinvent ourselves. The world, the only permanent thing is change. So we're going to change with the needs, requirements of the market. Constant change all the time. Two extremes, no change. We are adhering to our core values versus all change constantly. What's the genius of the and? The genius of the and that reject, we adhere to our values or we constantly change. The genius of the and says we have very strong core values. They have been with us for the past 100 years and they will stay with us. That's what our company is about. And around these core values, we're always changing, keeping with the times, so to speak. So it's an example of the genius of the end. Let me give you another example. There are companies that pride themselves on delegation. on empowerment. We let our employees run free. We're all about always delegation, empowerment, giving them responsibility because we trust our employees. Which sounds like a wonderful thing. On the other hand, we have companies with managers who say, look, I know best. The company can't afford to let the employees make mistakes. I micromanage because it's necessary, because we've been doing it all along and it's working. And it's my way or the highway. And you have such companies or such units or departments within companies. You have both extremes in different business units, of course, and companies. What's the genius of the and? Genius of the and is we're about empowering. We're about delegating, giving our employees responsibility when appropriate, because there are times when micromanagement is essential, when failure is not an option. And then we cross the T's and dot the I's. We make sure things are done properly. And we teach our employees to take responsibility so that in the future, we do not have to oversee the processes. So our goal is delegation, giving responsibility, but we do it responsibly when appropriate, not always. And sometimes we do need to manage the genius of the end. Okay, so that's the principle that these companies follow. They bring together yin and yang. They bring together seeming opposites. Now, these companies didn't invent this ability to bring together seeming contradiction. F. Scott Fitzgerald, the great American, early 20th century writer, said, the mark of a great mind is the ability to bring together seeming contradictions and still function. So this ability to synthesize opposites is important on the individual level and on the organizational level. So let me bring this lens to the realm of resilience. And I want to talk about three examples. There are many more, but I want to talk about three examples that are critical for cultivating resilience. Three seeming opposites, three pairs that have to be reconciled through the genius of the and. The first one is about reconciling between struggle and support. So if you want to cultivate resilience in yourself, in your children, in your employees, in your communities, what you need to do is provide both struggle as well as support. And I'm going to illustrate this through an example, a metaphor, a story that I recently heard that captures the importance of both. I want to tell you the story of Biosphere 2. Now, some of you may have heard of Biosphere 2. Those who haven't, what is a biosphere? Biosphere is a closed, self-contained, self-sustaining system. Self-contained, self-sustaining system. Biosphere 1 is Earth, our world, our globe. Self-contained, self-sustaining system. It's been around for millions of years, hopefully many more millions. And it's self-sustaining in that No oxygen comes from the outside, nor leaves. It recycles itself, it renews itself. We're pushing it a little bit too much these days, but in general, there is pollution, and then it renews itself, cleanses itself. How? Through the trees, for example. Take in carbon dioxide, release oxygen through the algae in the sea, through the rainfall. Self-sustaining, self-contained system. Now, scientists try to create a biosphere too, which is a mini Earth of sorts. So in the deserts of Arizona, they created a huge dome. And inside that dome, they put flowers, plants, trees, and humans to live. They couldn't leave. Nothing could enter, nothing would leave. A closed system, no oxygen, new oxygen came in. So the trees were supposed to recycle the air. The humans there really focused on recycling the water, for example. A self-contained, self-sustaining system. Now, why did they create it? Think about the possibilities. If it works, you can take a system like that and put it on the moon or Mars, or go to other planets that don't have the same conditions that we have here on Earth that sustains life. So we created a biosphere too. Again, a huge dome in the middle of the desert. It did not succeed in that every year it lost a little bit of oxygen. And think about it. If you put it out in space where you cannot import oxygen, you have a problem. However, they learned a lot, and maybe Biosphere 7.0 will be successful. Who knows? They're continuing to research this. But here is something interesting that they found in Biosphere 2. What they found was the following. They planted trees. They watered those trees. Sunlight came in from the outside. The top of the dome was transparent. And the trees would grow. The seeds germinated and the tree grew. But each time the tree got to a certain height, it suddenly fell over, broke. They planted other trees. Same thing. Got to that specific height, fell over, broke. They tried new fertilizers. They tried more water, less water. Experimented with different approaches to growing those trees. Got to the same height and fell over. And they didn't understand why. Until they understood why. The reason why these trees could not grow beyond a certain height was because on Biosphere 2, unlike Biosphere 1, on Biosphere 2, there was no wind. So when there is no wind, those trees did not struggle, were not forced to struggle. And as they didn't struggle, they didn't grow stronger. They didn't become resilient enough to withstand the strength that they needed to grow. And one of two things happened. Either their roots were too shallow and they fell over, or the trunk was not strong enough and literally broke. Why? Because those trees, as they were growing, did not have to sustain hardship, difficulty, struggle. And they didn't become stronger as a result. And think about it. It's not just trees that need struggle in order to grow stronger. Physically, imagine you go to the gym and you lift weights and all the weights are on 0. Easy. Great. Yeah? No. You won't grow stronger. You need resistance. You need to struggle in order to grow stronger physically. Trees need it. We also need it psychologically. Perhaps the greatest mistake that parents today make, certainly in the Western world, is that they deprive their children of struggle. In the words of John Haidt, they coddle them too much. And without struggle, trees don't grow properly, don't grow stronger, resilient. Physically, we don't grow stronger, and psychologically, we do not. So struggle is an inevitable part of growth. Any growth, physical, physiological, as well as psychological. That is the foundation of resilience. Now imagine if in life, each time you experience struggle, you learned to reframe it. Meaning, it's difficult by definition, otherwise it wouldn't be a struggle. But then you would say to yourself, okay, this is hard, and I'm learning from it. I'm growing from it. Or my child is struggling, and looking at my child struggling is not easy, especially when I know that I can alleviate that struggle. Help my child, or help my employee in the office. But more often than not, we're doing them a disservice when we take away that struggle, when we take away that metaphorical wind. So struggle is key for becoming resilient, for becoming stronger physically and psychologically. But not only struggle, at the same time, support. And where the genius of the ant lies is finding the right balance between the two. Because imagine a tree out in nature and there is a storm. And there is very strong wind. What sometimes happens is that the tree breaks when it doesn't have enough support. So what we need to do is identify that sweet spot, that right balance, that synthesis between allowing for struggle and providing support. What does this support look like? Very often this support is simply merely about being heard. One of the topics that we talk about a lot in our program is what we call the permission to be human, the permission to experience any and all emotions, creating a safe space where I can express my emotion rather than suppress them. And if, as a parent, or as a friend, or as a manager, I lend an ear, I listen, I'm present, I'm there for the other person, and providing them very often all the support that they need. Children who are listened to grow up to be more confident adults. In other words, more resilient adults. Employees who are listened to by their manager become more resilient, are more likely to stay in the workplace. Couples who truly listen. We think, especially men, think that we need to give advice when our partner is struggling. Well, sometimes the best we can do for our partner is to support them by listening. There are other ways, of course, of supporting, which I'm not going to go into now. The key idea, what I hope you come away with, is the need for both. The need for struggle and, not or, and the need for support. The genius of the and. All right, moving on to the second pair that is essential for the cultivation of resilience, and that is strengths. And here I'm going to talk about two types of strengths. When people talk about strength and how important they are, and there's a lot of research on it. They usually talk about the kind of strength that responds to the question, what are you good at? In other words, what are your strengths? What are you strong at? And the answer to that may be, well, I'm good at writing, or I'm good at listening, or I'm good at crunching numbers, or I'm good at leading a group and managing processes, whatever it is. People have different strengths. So what are you good at? What are your strengths? This is the general question that people ask, but that's not enough. There is a second set of questions that we need to ask that is often pitted against the first. In other words, there is the tyranny of the or, this kind of strength or this kind of strength. The second set of questions doesn't revolve around what are you good at or what are your strengths, but rather, what are your passions? What gives you strength? In other words, what energizes you? So two different sets of questions. On the one hand, what are your strengths? What are you good at? And on the other hand, what gives you strength? What's your passion? And they're not always the same. Let me give you a personal example. So what gives me strength, what I'm passionate about, is music. I really, really love music. But believe me, you do not want to hear me sing. So it's the one kind of strength. What am I passionate about? What gives me strength? It certainly energizes me, but it's not the other kind of strength. What am I good at? What is my strength? The kind of strength that responds, that is an answer to the question, what am I good at? What is my strength? Is what I call performance strength. Where do I perform well? Singing, not so. The other form of strength, what am I passionate about? What gives me strength? What energizes me? That's the passion strength. So we have performance and passion. The synthesis, the genius of the and. Where do these overlap in my life? And what the research clearly shows is where the two overlap. That's where we are, not just at our best, we are at our most resilient. Let me give you another personal example. Research. I'm pretty good at research. I have a good grasp of it. I've taught research. I certainly talk about it, and I can also conduct research. But I'm not passionate about the process, the research process. I'm very happy when others do the research and I can report and I can talk about it, just like I'm doing right now, talking about research on strengths. So it's my passion, it's my performance strength, pretty good at it. It's not my passion strength. It doesn't energize me. So music is passion, no performance. Research, performance, not passion. For me personally, writing. I love to write. I wake up in the morning, sit in front of this computer and write. And I'm also pretty good at it. And I'm getting better at it because I practice and I love it. And I practice and I enjoy it. And I become better and better. It's my performance and passion strength. And therefore, engaging in writing is not just an enjoyable activity for me. It also, for me, cultivates my resilience. Why? Because it gives me more confidence about who I am. in the world, it elevates my self-esteem. And it would do so for a 10-year-old girl or for an 80-year-old person. When we focus on the combination between what am I passionate about? What am I good at? Performance and passion strength. And we bring them together. The overlap between these two circles leads to resilience. We did research. One of my students did research looking at immigrants in college. Now, immigrants in college, certainly their first year, very often for the 4 years, struggle. And we had them during their first year at the beginning. Some of them simply answer these questions. Make a list of what you're good at, what your strengths are. And they made a list. And then we asked them to make a second list. What are you passionate about? What gives you strength and energizes you? And they made a second list. And then we asked the third question. Find the overlap between these two lists. And they did. That's all we did. We raised their levels of awareness about the overlap between performance and passion strength. As a result of that intervention, they were better able to handle the struggles and the hardships of their college experience, year one and beyond. In other words, they didn't avert the struggle, they still struggled, but they were better able to deal with it. In other words, they were more resilient because they applied the genius of the and to their strengths. Okay, so we have struggle joining with support. We have performance joining with passion. The third and last one is bringing together aspiration and appreciation. Aspiration, in other words, having goals, thinking about the future, and appreciation, appreciating the moment, what I've done, not taking it for granted. Now, very often you would find one of the two as the dominant mode of operation for an individual. So there are people who would say, for me, I'm all about the future, all about goals. I have high aspirations, and that's great. On the other hand, you have individuals and say, look, I'm more accepting and embracing of what I already have. I appreciate and savor what is already there. That's so great. In order to maximize resilience, you want to cultivate both. Have goals, have aspirations, be ambitious. And again, ambition can be at work, or you're ambitious for your improvement of your relationship, or you're ambitious in terms of personal growth. But as humans, we need to have a purpose. We need to have a goal. We need meaning in our life. And that means having a purpose and having a goal. And when we do that, that strengthens us. In the words of Friedrich Nietzsche, later quoted by Viktor Frankl, when you have a what for, every how becomes possible. In other words, when you have a goal, an aspiration, a what for, you can overcome difficulties and challenges. In other words, you become more resilient. At the same time, we also know that people who express gratitude on a regular basis, who say thank you for what they have, who do not take for granted, whether it's their loved ones or their work or the food on the table, are significantly more resilient as well. You want to maximize your potential? The genius of the and. Have aspirations, have goals, have a what for. What gives you meaning in life? What gives you a sense of purpose? And what can I appreciate? What am I grateful for? And it's that kind of life that synthesizes, that brings the two together, that yields the highest level of resilience. To summarize, just as great companies that fulfill their potential, that are built to last, in the words of Collins and Porras, integrate between seeming opposites, introducing the genius of the and, so do individuals who are built to last, who are most resilient. Specifically, I talked about 3 different pairs that they synthesize. They embrace struggle, and they both give and look for appropriate support, struggle and support. They focus on the 2 types of strength and bring the overlap between them. The 2 kinds of strength: performance strength, what am I good at, and passion strength, what gives me strength. And finally, they have aspirations, they have goals. And beyond being ambitious, they're also appreciative. And they do not take for granted what they have. So I appreciate your listening. I so much appreciate you being here. And I hope that you join us as part of your personal growth, professional growth, or any other aspiration that you have. I'm going to stop here. And before I take your questions, a couple of things. First, let's watch a quick video. This is my co-founder of the Happiness Studies Academy, Yuval Kutz, talking about the certificate program, just to give you a sense of what it's about. And then I'm going to invite dear Meg to share her experience with you, and then we'll open it up for your questions.
Hello everyone. I'm so glad that you're here with us today, and I want to thank you for your interest in the Happiness Studies Academy and our incredible community. Our global network of students and graduates are eager to welcome each and every one of you. At the Happiness Studies Academy, HSA, we offer fully online programs, including the world's first accredited master's degree in happiness studies and even a PhD in human flourishing. But today, I'm going to talk about our flagship program, the Certificate in Happiness Studies. This program has become the cornerstone of our academy. It has brought together thousands of students from around the globe who've not only learned about happiness, but have formed friendships, started businesses, and truly embraced what we call the happiness revolution.
Yo soy la revolución de la felicidad en acción.
Yo soy la revolución de la felicidad en acción.
Yo soy la revolución de la felicidad en acción.
אני מהפכת האושר בפעולה.
Yo soy la revolución de la felicidad en acción.
मैं खुशी क्रांति का प्रतीक हूँ.
我是幸福革命践行者。
I am the happiness revolution in action.
Eu sou a revolução da felicidade em ação.
One of our students put it perfectly when she said, "Anywhere I go in the world, I always have a place to stay." This speaks to the deepest connections and sense of belonging that our community fosters. The certificate program is a year-long online journey that blends theory and practice. You will dive deep into our SPIRE model, covering spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional well-being. You will explore research-based insights and practical techniques that you can apply in a personal, communal, or professional way. The course has a weekly structure with 3 main components. The first component is pre-recorded lectures. These are delivered by Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, who will guide you through the science and wisdom behind happiness. You will travel through different cultures and times, learning what the great thinkers of the world in the fields of psychology, neuroscience, arts, economics, and more have to say about living well. The second component is the weekly exercises and the educational content. We believe that happiness, like any other skill, requires practice. These exercises are designed to help you apply what you learn in a way that's meaningful and is transformative for you. The third component is the live sessions with Tal.
Hello, everyone, and welcome.
Every week we gather from all over the world for a 1.5 hour session with Tal. It's a time for sharing, learning, and connecting.
Wow, that's amazing.
We're also proud to offer this program in multiple languages: English, Chinese, French, Hebrew, Japanese, Portuguese, Spanish, and Vietnamese, so that it's accessible to as many people as possible.
HSA is not a certificate program. HSA is a community.
I signed up for the material, and the teacher, obviously world renowned and wonderful. What I didn't realize is that I was going to get a community that is so wonderful.
You also automatically become a member of our Alumni and Business Club, ABC. The ABC is a thriving network where you will receive mentorship, participate in specialized working groups, access business opportunities, join in-person events, and get access to the highlight of the year, our biannual in-person retreats in different locations around the world, where we learn, grow, dance, and get to know each other better. Most importantly, when you enroll, you get lifetime access to everything I just mentioned: the lectures, exercises, the most comprehensive bibliography on happiness available today, invitations to weekly live sessions with Tal, and more. Once you graduate, you will receive a certificate recognizing you as an HSA certified happiness trainer, so that you are ready to share what you've learned and help others on their own path to improving their overall well-being. Thank you once again for being here. I look forward to our journey together.
Wonderful. So you'll get an opportunity to ask questions about the certificate program or anything I spoke about, or as I said, anything else. But before, I'd like to invite my fellow journeyer and friend, Meg Nocera. Hello, Meg.
Hi, Tal. I love that I'm speaking after a presentation on resilience, because part 3, or number 3, the whole aspirational and appreciative component. I think at one point in my life, when I left my former career as a federal prosecutor, I aspired to be a part of a community like HSA. And I think right now I can say I'm so appreciating all those beautiful faces in that video that you just showed that I know in person, because I've had the opportunity to attend all your wonderful retreats. And I will say this: strong, close connections, as we have learned, correlate with higher well-being. So the fact that you have these retreats in person as well as the opportunity to be on Zoom is just a wonderful opportunity to make those relationships thrive. So I will say, just as a brief, introduction of myself, like I said, I was a former federal prosecutor. I have done a TEDx speech. I have 3 award-winning books, and in the end, and I'm a part of this wonderful community. I joined in 2019, June 2019. I met during Wahatsu, a conference here in Miami. I am from Miami, Florida. So anybody out there, we like to correlate around where we're from too. So keeps that wonderful vibration of happiness revolution going. I graduated not in 1 year. I graduated in July 2021. So that is a part of the program that I appreciate, is I did it on my own time, in light of my own duties or responsibilities. So while I didn't do it in the 1 year, I did graduate in 2021. And it was really exciting to actually get my certificate when I went to the retreat in Lake Como, Italy. And I got to get it personally from Tal and Udi and Yuval. But I also was at the Miami retreat where Tal announced to everyone, with Marty Seligman at his side, that he was launching the first master's in happiness studies, which I'm so excited to say I graduated this past May 2025 with that cohort, the second cohort. It was an incredible experience. I couldn't recommend it more. Like I said, the community of people and the wonderful experiences, all the knowledge. I'm a seeker by, by birth, I guess. As many people here on this wonderful journey, Tal calls us fellow journeyers, are seekers. And I now am in the doctorate program in happiness studies, and I get to be a part of that creative, wonderful new birth, the pioneers, to bring this happiness revolution to another level. And certainly that's what his wonderful professors are doing. But with regard to the certificate, it all really started there because I found a lot of wonderful information every week when I signed in from Tal. He always has a topic that seems to resonate. And a lot of my colleagues or our fellow journeyers always come to the table with wonderful questions as well, bringing a more deeper, profound meaning to the topic at hand. I will say I love this community. I am a mentor. I have a mentoring group as well. I have had it for 3 years, and I've promised each one of my mentees that I will be there at their graduation at the retreat. And on top of that, fun experiences like the HSS Business Club. I just started with 2 other colleagues, the HSA Movie Group, where we get together on a monthly basis to watch movies and talk about how they hit us each in different wonderful ways to get a deeper deep dive into that as well. And yeah, I'm going to Rio, so I hope to meet a lot of you there. And like I said, I think first and foremost, the most exciting thing about this group, certainly Tal and his wonderful, innovative, creative insight to bring it all together with Yuval. But it's all the people. We have so many different strengths here. And, I've always, I'm a lawyer by trade, so the competition element has always been there. And this is a really collaborative space where you come up with different ideas, you share those ideas, and you elevate each other. Like he said, elevate each other to a different level, which I think is really wonderful that we support each other. One of his, tenets of resilience as well, and certainly encourage those passions in the performance. So I want to thank Tal for the opportunity to speak to everyone today, certainly welcoming any questions that you may have. I don't know it all, but what I do know, I'm happy to share. I'm very collaborative. One of my favorite things in the world is to inspire others to fully follow their dreams and go for it, embracing joy, certainly happiness, becoming happier, and, living a life of bliss or sparkle or whatever you want to call it. So thank you, Tal, so much for this. And anyway, hello to everybody. Oh, I did yoga too. Spire yoga. Got to do that. That's great for your mental well-being, mind, body, and spirit. Melena's on here too, so she can answer those questions. But thank you, Tal.
Thank you very much, Meg. It's been wonderful to be on this journey with you. I was thinking, so now we're on the PhD journey together. And again, Meg is in the first class. We're quite literally creating it as we go along. And the nice thing is that even after the PhD, this is a community, as Yuval mentioned in the video, for life. I always tell our people who join, you're here with us for life unless you don't want to be. So, no pressure, no guilt. But as long as you want to be part of this community, we're game. We're embracing. Thank you very much, Meg. Okay, so we're going to open it up for questions right now. I find it difficult to multitask, so I will try and look at the chat as well, but it would be a lot easier if you can, just like Margarita did, put your hand up, which is, go down, to raise hand like this, and I will call on you and invite you to ask the question. And again, it can be a question about what I spoke about, what Meg spoke about, or any other topic that is of interest. So, Margarita,
hello,
yours.
How are you? Can you hear me?
Very well.
Okay, so I'm very happy to be here again. I joined the last call. My specific question is that I'm trying to find the Indian culture, call it the Dharma. I think is related to what you are talking about, the purpose. So, what more guidance could you help me? I have, in my specific case, I have a long career on technology and other things, and I want to shift into something more related with my purpose in life. So, what advice would you give me related to this?
Yeah. Margarita, that's obviously a very important question. And whether or not we find it often determines how happy or unhappy we are. What's also important to realize is that merely asking this question is already an important step in the right direction. So the fact that you're asking whether it's, someone else or whether you ask yourself, that is an important question to ask. Okay, so that's a step one, asking. How do we respond to this question? And there are many things that I can say. Now let me focus just on one. And that is to draw on AI. But not the AI that everyone's thinking about that has become, the talk of the day, so to speak, artificial intelligence, but an AI that preceded artificial intelligence, and that is appreciative inquiry. Appreciative inquiry. Let me say a few words about it because it really is a very important subfield of the field of happiness studies. What is appreciative inquiry? It was introduced by David Cooperrider, a professor at Case Western University. It was introduced back in the 1970s, 1980s. Today, it's basically a very flourishing, a thriving movement that has had impact on many fields and many organizations around the world. The idea of appreciative inquiry is very simple. Traditional inquiry in the field of psychology looks at problems, looks at what doesn't work. For example, if you go to a therapist, Margarita, the first question that the therapist will ask you, either explicitly or implicitly, is, what's wrong? Why are you going to therapy? What's not working in your life? Or another example, couples counselor. If you go with your partner to a couples counselor, the implicit question or explicit question is, what's wrong with your relationship or what's not working? What do you want to work on? Fix. Or an organizational psychologist would ask, what's not working? What's not going well in your in your organization? What are the weaknesses of the manager or of the team? Let's fix those. So that's the implicit question that has been, or questions that have been dominant in the field of psychology. Appreciative inquiry says, let's change the questions. Let's ask appreciative questions that don't focus on the empty part of the glass, but rather focus on the full part of the glass. So for example, a therapist trained in appreciative inquiry would ask, when you come in, what's working in your life? What's going well? What can we build on? We're not ignoring the problems, but we're starting with what is going well. Or a couples counselor would begin to ask, what's working in your relationship? You wouldn't be here if nothing was working. Let's focus on that, build on that. Or an organizational consultant would begin by asking what's going well in the organization? What are the strengths of the team, of the manager? Start with that. So in a nutshell, appreciative inquiry focuses on what works. Now let's apply this, Margarita, to your question. How do I find my path? One way to think about it is, well, I've tried Investment banking, yeah, not for me. I've tried teaching, not really. I've tried this and that, didn't work. And by elimination, let me try something new. And that's great. That's important and can actually help. But what appreciative inquiry would say is, let's start with what is working. With a question such as, when did you feel most alive? Reflect on an experience where you felt connected to yourself or to a sense of purpose. And it could be when you were 13 years old in school or a summer camp. It could be something that happened yesterday as you volunteered in a school. Or it could be a specific project at work that you did that you really felt like you came alive. And when you focus on those as a start, what very often happens is that the picture becomes clearer. Okay, so I really came alive when I worked with people. Well, I need to think more about working for people, with people. That is what makes me come alive. Maybe that's where I can find my purpose. And then you go and experiment and try it. So you start with grounded positivity. This is not just positive thinking. This is grounded positivity. You look at something that actually happened, that you experienced, and from that you derive conclusions, potential, direction for the future. In a nutshell, appreciative inquiry is the following, and I'm going to repeat it a couple of times. Appreciative inquiry is focusing on the best from the past to inspire the present and create a better future. Again, drawing on the best from the past to inspire the present and create a better future. So you draw on the best from the past with questions, appreciative, positive questions. When were you at your best? When did you feel most alive? When were you happiest? When did things work for you really well? These are all appreciative questions. Responding to these questions, talking about these positive experiences actually inspires us in the present. And there's a lot of research that shows that when we're inspired in the present, our mind opens. It's what psychologist Barbara Fredrickson calls broaden and build. We think more broadly. We're able to build a better future. We create a better future through that. By the way, appreciative inquiry can be introduced to any domain. Take relationships, for example. So often we try and fix relationships, and it's important, of course. You shouldn't ignore what's not working in a relationship. However, not enough couples focus on what has worked well in the past. Because when they do, they inspire the present and they potentially create a better future. What appreciative inquiry shows is that taking that approach as a consulting approach, or as a coaching approach, or as a parenting approach, or as a managing approach, or as a teaching approach, is much more likely to help the other fulfill their true potential.
Wow.
So apply it.
Thank you.
Purpose, Margarita.
Thank you very much. This is great.
Thank you. I hope it helps.
It does.
Okay. I see another question. Thank you for sending it to me from the chat. How is this different from other certificates, say, in positive psychology? So let me broaden this question because, I'm asked this question a lot. So how is this different, for example, from my Harvard course, which was on positive psychology, from a certificate that I used to offer on positive psychology? What is happiness studies? How does it differ? In a very important way. Two important ways. One is the SPIRE model. So again, we focus on spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and emotional well-being. Let me say just a few words about each one of these. When it comes to spiritual well-being, we're focusing on a sense of meaning and purpose. That's one part of spiritual well-being. And we focus on mindfulness and presence. When we're mindful, when we're present, we experience spiritual well-being. When we're working towards something that we believe in, that is meaningful to us, we're experiencing spiritual well-being. Many people experience spiritual well-being in their religious practice, of course. But we can also experience spirituality when working in a bank or in a school or raising a family, if that is what is meaningful to us. So Margarita's question, for example, was a question that falls squarely under spiritual well-being. How do I identify my path, my calling? The P of SPIRE, physical well-being, that's about nutrition, and it's about exercise, and it's about sleep, and it's about touch. It's about the mind-body connection. For instance, regular physical exercise has the same effect on our psychological well-being as our most powerful psychiatric medication. Nutrition, of course, affects our physical well-being and our psychological well-being. Recovery is critical for a healthy and happy life. So that's physical well-being. Then we have intellectual well-being. Do you know, for example, that people who learn, lifelong learners, people who ask questions all the time, people who are curious, are not just happier, which they are, they're not just more successful, which they are, they also live longer. So they're healthier. It strengthens our immune system. Curiosity may kill the cat. It does the exact opposite to us humans. So that's intellectual well-being. It's about being curious. It's about learning that contributes to well-being, physical and psychological. Then there is relational well-being. Relational well-being is the number one predictor of happiness, quality time we spend with people we care about and who care about us. As Meg highlighted, as Yuval highlighted, Happiness Studies Academy is first and foremost about a community of like-minded and like-hearted people. We support each other through struggles. We help elevate each other. Kindness, generosity, one of the most direct paths to happiness. Not just the happiness of others, the people we're being kind to or generous towards, but also our happiness as we commit an act of kindness. Then there is emotional well-being. Emotional well-being, the E of SPIRE, is first and foremost about embracing and accepting painful emotions when these arise. I mentioned earlier the permission to be human. A happy life is not a life devoid of struggle, of pain. My 18-year-old students, will learn that. So it's about embracing and accepting emotions, dealing with them effectively. And then it's also about cultivating pleasurable emotions like joy, like gratitude, like love, like excitement, and so on. So these are the 5 SPIRE elements. And in that, we're different from most other programs out there. The second difference again, the distinction between the Happiness Studies Academy program and positive psychology programs is that happiness studies goes beyond psychology. So our students read Aristotle and Lao Tzu and Helen Keller and Shakespeare. And they watch movies on happiness. And we bring together these disciplines, philosophy, art, neuroscience, and we integrate them all to help us better answer that question. How can I help myself? How can I help others become happier? In the broad sense of the word. We draw on ancient wisdom as well as the latest research. And what we get is the understanding of happiness as whole being, as holistic. Not just about pleasure. Yeah, of course, pleasure is important for happiness, and it's much more than that. So it's interdisciplinary in that it's different from just positive psychology, and it focuses on a broader array of interventions that fall under the SPIRE model. Thank you for that question. Sandy, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know, someone in private sent me a question about, and I think it's worth answering in public. What are the once you get the certificate, where or how you can use it and how you can, work with it, where you can work with it, what's the use about it? What's the application?
Great. So I'm happy to answer that. Just so you know, Sandy is the head of our ABC, which is the Alumni and Business Club, which is a 100% student initiative. And every week, programs and new clubs are forming. Meg mentioned her club of happiness in film. And there's a book writing club. Sandy and Meg are both published, successful authors. So thank you, Sandy, for all that you do, and thank you for the question. So what do you do with certificate in happiness studies, or with an MA or a PhD for that matter? So let me reflect on what some of our students are doing. We have students who are using what they have learned to become happiness trainers, and they go out and they teach workshops and they offer seminars. Meg, Sandy are doing that, for example, among other things. They write books about the topic. We have many coaches who take the material and apply it in their coaching practice. We have many therapists. Now, I always emphasize that, being trained in happiness studies doesn't make you a therapist. And if someone comes to you who's experiencing depression and you're not a therapist, send them to one. However, the field of happiness studies can and has done so remarkably help all therapists, because if you apply some of the tools and techniques in a therapy session, you're likely to be more effective. Your client is likely to benefit a great deal more. So it augments, it improves, it enhances the quality of therapy, or the quality of coaching for that matter. We have students or graduates who have become chief happiness officers, either explicitly talking about actually being called chief happiness officers, or they are in HR and they bring programs that enhance well-being. You see, we know that if you increase levels of well-being in employees, they become more productive, they become more creative, they're more likely to stay in the workplace. So turnover goes down. They are going to be more effective in your organization. is actually going to be more profitable. There is a direct link between well-being levels and economic success of an organization. We have many teachers among our students. They become better teachers. They increase levels of well-being among their students, and happier students are better students. Not to mention healthier. Not to mention more engaged and motivated. So teaching benefits a great deal from understanding happiness studies. And again, whether a certificate, a master's program, or a PhD. Our PhDs, again, we just launched the PhD. Hopefully many of them are going to become professors in different, whether it's happiness studies departments in the future, or psychology departments, or departments of education, or business school, or law faculty. Because wherever you apply happiness, you find an increasing improvement in numerous variables, from the physical health all the way to cognitive functioning and group success, better relationships. Additionally, we have mayors taking our courses, and they're implementing Spire, just like they implement in school, they implement it in their community. What others? Sandy, am I missing, forgetting anything? What else do our graduates do? I mean, really, they are all over.
All over doing, we have doctors applying it in their work practice. We have architects applying it to their building projects. We have all sorts of people doing things with the knowledge, which is so great to see. The happiness revolution in action all over the world and in many disciplines.
Yeah. Yeah, so and we have ministers in governments as well. And you mentioned the architect. Our fellow journey is organizing a conference next year in Spain, which I can't wait to attend, talking about this connection between a happy environment, whether it's a home or a neighborhood or a city. And what's the role of an architect in designing that? So really fascinating stuff happening, as Sandy mentioned, the happiness revolution in action. I have another question here about the retreats. So let me say a few more words, and at the end, in a few minutes, we will show a short video on our retreat, so you can stay and watch that if you wish. Why do we have retreats? When we founded the Happiness Studies Academy, we had a real dilemma. In fact, we thought about it for months, and before that, I thought about it for a long time. Do we have a program that is 100% in person? And in fact, we thought of getting a place, a large retreat place, and basically being there. And people would come, hopefully, from all over the world to that place. And I had done work with some of those retreat places, and I love them. So I said, maybe that's what we should do. One option. Option two was to create a hybrid program. And that hybrid program would include an in-person component and an online component. And I've done a few of those, and they work great. The third option was 100% online. Each of the three options has its advantages and disadvantages. We opted, as you know, for the 100% online option. And why? Because we wanted to have as many people as possible attend from around the world. And we have students from over 100 countries now participating in our programs. So that's great. However, we also understood that we would pay a price for this. And the price is that you get something else different when you are face to face, in the same room, playing in the same sandbox, dancing on the same dance floor, doing yoga in the same studio. Different. Breaking bread together. We didn't want to lose that. So what we did was we created those retreats. What are those retreats? Those retreats are not required in any way to attend in order to graduate. So we have graduates from the certificate program. We have graduates from the master's program who have never been to a retreat. Why? Because they don't want to, because it's too far, because they didn't have time, whatever. And that's perfectly fine. And yet those retreats are there twice a year in different places. So the next one, beginning of November in Rio, Brazil. The one before that was in Finland. The one before that was in Mexico City. The one before that was in Lake Como, Italy. We had in Florida, in Miami, and we had in New Jersey, and we had in Shanghai and Beijing, and in Colombia, Cartagena. So all over the world. And few people come to all of them. More people come to many of them. And some people have been to one because it was close to where they live. Or they just had time off from work, so they came. And these retreats are extraordinary. Extraordinary. Just the level of energy there and the connection. And you know what we do there? Well, you'll see on the video if you stay. But we dance together. And we do yoga together, and we talk a lot together over lunch or dinner or just walking. And there are lectures and workshops and networking and fun, a lot of it. I always repeat this because I think it's so important. When it comes to the content, the material that we teach, it's really good. But that's easy. How would it not be good when you draw on, the leading researchers in the world, Marty Seligman and Sonja Lyubomirsky, and the greatest thinkers in history like Helen Keller and Lao Tzu and Chinua Achebe? How could it not be good? That's easy. When you have literally all disciplines and all of history to pick from. But what's not easy is creating a community, especially when you're an primarily online organization. And we've done that. And when I say we, it's mostly the students or graduates, the fellow journeyers, like Sandy, like Meg, who are creating this remarkable community of like-minded, like-hearted people that is so supportive, that is so warm, that is so wise, that I'm so honored to be a part of. And I hope you join us. Thank you, Meg. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Udi, for all you're doing behind the scenes. And thank you all for joining us. And we hope to see you, whether it's online in our live webinars, whether it's in our retreats in Rio or in another beautiful location on our global village. Hope you join our community. Take good care, everyone. Bye-bye.
To me, the word that comes to mind the most is connection.
Knowing very authentic and generous people from all over the world, for me, it was life-changing.
Get in here and you've got fantastic support in every which way possible.
didn't expect such a level of preparation, and it is just mind-blowing. You know, they are treating us like princesses and princes, or like I'm coming for the best date of my life.
People hug each other, they smile to each other, they support each other, which is amazing because this is not something you can learn. Such a passion towards other people can only come if you have the happiness in your heart and that you care for other people. And the HSI community is the community of people who care for others.